good afternoon to all of you. This is Dr. J.N.R. Prasad, Senior Assistant Professor in the Department of MCA, Secunderabad Institute of Technology. Welcoming you all to this webinar. Artificial intelligence makes it possible for machines to learn from experience, adjust to new inputs, and perform human-like tasks. Most AI examples that we hear about today, from chess-playing computers to self-driving cars, rely heavily on artificial intelligence technologies like deep learning, natural language processing. Using these technologies, computers can be trained to accomplish specific tasks by processing large amounts of data and recognizing patterns in the data. The AI is playing a very key role in the coming years. Based on all these things, today we have a webinar conducting by the Department of MCA on the topic of the emerging trends using AI. Thank you, Mr. N. Gopikrishna Garu, for accepting our invitation. I request Pravina Madam, please take over the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Initially, we'll have the digital lamp lighting ceremony to start with the webinar.
शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्परब्रह्म दीपज्योतिर्जनार्दनः दीपज्योतिर्परब्रह्म दीपज्योतिर्जनार्दनः दीपो हरतु मे पापम् सन्ध्यादीपनमोऽस्तुते ओ दीपब्रह्मरूपस्त्वं ज्योतिषां प्रभुरव्ययः ओ दीपब्रह्मरूपस्त्वं ज्योतिषां प्रभुरव्ययः आरोग्यं देहि पुत्रांश्च मतिं स्वच्छां हि मे सदा रवेरस्तं समारभ्य यावत् सूर्योदयो भवेत् रवेरस्तं समारभ्य यावत् सूर्योदयो भवेत् यस्य तिष्ठे गृहे दीपः तस्य नास्ति दरिद्रता शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः.
Good afternoon, all. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today, Mr. N. Gopikrishna Garu, who is going to talk to us about the topic, the emerging trends using artificial intelligence. The presenter, Mr. N. Gopikrishna Garu, is working as lead data scientist, Autodesk Construction Solutions, Hyderabad. Mr. Gopikrishna Garu is a data scientist, author, and machine learning engineer. He is a recognized subject matter expert in data science and a full stack machine learning engineer with 18 years of experience in artificial intelligence, data analytics, machine learning, computer vision, and software development. He has proven track record with multiple awards, research publications, and patents. He is experienced in working with structured and unstructured datasets. He is the author of the Amazon bestseller, Machine Learning for Engineers. He has 2 patents on his name. So, let's please welcome Mr. Gopikrishna Garu for the webinar this afternoon. Thank you all.
Thanks, Prasad Garu and Madam for the very kind introduction. And thanks to CBIT for actually having me here in this session. So, the topic I'm going to speak about today is the emerging trends in the artificial intelligence. So at any point of time, please feel free to stop me to ask any questions on this. The outline of the session that I want to do right now is a very, very brief look at the history of artificial intelligence. Okay, I won't bore you with all the details. You are already familiar with it, but just for sake of completeness, I'll have it for like maybe 3 to 4 minutes of it. And then we'll go into specific areas. I mean, artificial intelligence is a very wide area, and a lot of trends are emerging. But I have chosen a few of them which I'm familiar with. So I'll discuss in some detail on those areas, and we'll go into a little more detail on that. And I'll spend the last 2 to 4 minutes speaking about our must research club. So that's how I would like to structure this talk here. But at any point of time, if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me, and we can discuss the details. So, like I said, we will start with a very brief intro to what is artificial intelligence and all. I mean, we all know what artificial intelligence is. It's essentially, we are making machines intelligent. I mean, that was a grand dream when it started a long time ago, and it still remains a grand dream. When did this start, and how did this start? It definitely didn't start with Charles Babbage and his, the initial analog computer that he built. That was not the origin of artificial intelligence. The humble origins of artificial intelligence definitely can be credited to Dr. Alan Turing. He was the one who has envisioned a thinking machine, and he was the one who has actually foreseen the Turing test, which is testing whether a machine is intelligent or not. So that's where it has started. And at that time, we didn't have anything digital. At that time, they were just beginning to build the computers. But very fast, very soon, the dreams started expanding and exploding, and machine learning as a distinct subdomain of artificial intelligence has evolved based upon statistical approaches, and it has very quickly branched into linear algebra based approaches. And at that time, the grand dream was that artificial intelligence and a fully functional thinking brain like computer was possible in 10 years. This was back in 1950, 1960. And the painful reality, which is called as AI winter, was that the field of artificial intelligence went through 2 cycles of hype and fall. Again, a hype and a fall. During the fall, it was, that the fall happened when it was realized that the computing capabilities that were available at that time were far too meager to address the complexity of the cognition that is something which we humans have. Okay, and during those two periods where the funding and research everything has dried up, they were called as AI winters. The only group of people who were interested in AI was Hollywood. They were very fond of showing AI as as the super villain who is going to take over everything, and all the Terminator style of movies, and all the Matrix style of movies, where AI is competing with humans and killing us, right? So we went through that phase twice, but starting in 2000s, the computing power became cheap, the algorithms became much more sophisticated, and AI started becoming mainstream. And definitely the tech giants, the early adopters were the tech giants, that is Google, Microsoft, definitely Amazon, Facebook, Apple. These are all the early adopters of the world who have applied AI in the correct way and have reaped immense benefits out of AI. Google's initial search results were based on something called page ranking algorithm. this number, the term is very familiar to all of us, right? The importance of a page was dependent on how many other pages were referring to this page, the backlink concept. But that was very soon dispelled, and machine learning based, NLP based, algorithms came into both into Google and into Bing, Microsoft Bing, and many other areas. And definitely, Facebook has adopted AI at a very large and massive scale, and proved that they can make money using AI. And that's where the earlier Amazon, of course, they have, the to quote Jeff Bezos, there were no solutions for our problems, so we went ahead and invented solutions. That's what he said. So the early adopters, they have definitely pushed the boundaries and broken the barriers, and they have proved that AI is real and very much practical, and AI started becoming mainstream. And along with the mainstreaming of AI came a lot of marketing hype. A real, sometimes disgusting amount of marketing hype. We'll just go through a few examples going in the next slides. Okay, where AI was sort of, people were saying that, okay, once AI is here, the entire factory of 10,000 employees will be fired. Only CEO is sufficient to run the company. This is the kind of marketing hype that went on. But and different technologies, different subdomains of AI are going through a different hype cycle on that. We'll see the details in the coming slides as well on where each one of them, where each subdomain is in the AI hype cycle. Okay, and we'll also see how the future what are the upcoming improvements that are for which the research is happening right now, etc. Okay, so but on the general, speaking in a very layman language without going into all the technical details, what we can generally speak of as the trends that are happening is deep learning is taking over. In the earlier days of machine learning, it was the statistics based approaches which have really brought in a lot of improvements. Supervised learning, unsupervised learning were heavily dependent upon statistics, whether it is linear regression or whether it is ordinary least squares, or whether it is logistic regression, random decision trees, k-means clustering, you name it. It was essentially statistics based. But deep learning has become really feasible right now, and because of various advances like multi-layer deep neural networks being rather feasible, things like transfer learning, which has really broken the boundaries and shown some orders of magnitude improvement when it comes to processing unstructured data. Improvements like new algorithms like recurrent neural networks, long short-term memories, encoders, decoders, etc., etc. All these different new algorithms have taken deep learning miles ahead of statistics-based learning, and it's becoming ubiquitous and commonplace. The challenge of explainability of deep learning has always remained a black box, or at least so far it has remained a black box. Now, it's not a white box yet, far from it, but we are beginning to see indications that even deep learning can be explained, at least to a certain extent. So that is, the explainability of deep learning is also just beginning to happen. Then and definitely along with this mainstreaming of AI has come the commercialization and monetization of AI, which is the commoditization of AI. And then the really interesting thing that is happening is AI on the edge, where AI, instead of being a bubble of its own, is sort of expanding and mixing into multiple other domains like IoT, edge computing, robotic process automation, etc., which is forming the backbone or the main driver for AI on the edge. And along with those, definitely is coming exploitation. Wherever there is an opportunity, there is an exploitation. So AI is being used for several, exploiting vulnerable sections. Frauds are happening, and there are security breaches, etc. Being social engineering. All these things are being made possible. There are even other violations of privacy like deep fakes, etc., which is becoming a big concern for law enforcement departments, etc. Okay. Then, and along with this, also with this, combined with the marketing hype, is coming standards, wherein there is a demand for saying that, okay, standardize all these different terminology, because there is a famous proverb in English saying that if you cannot convince someone, confuse them. Success is if you can't succeed by convincing, you succeed by confusing. And that's essentially how AI is being marketed to to people who are not really familiar with what goes on behind the scenes. A long time back, almost from 20 years back, one of the automobile manufacturers in India made a huge hype saying that we have launched India's first computer controlled car. Okay. Even today, we don't have a computer controlled car, strictly speaking. But all they had back then was a small sensor and a small processing chip, which said that if the temperature is too high, then a light has to go off on the dashboard. It was just a sensor, but it was hyped up saying that it was India's first computer controlled car. Far from it. It was totally, completely a human controlled car. Okay. So the same thing is happening with AI right now. Almost every product that we see claims that, hey, we are using AI, whereas there's not really AI in it, or at least the usage of AI is not as high as they say that is happening into it. A lot of them are standard rules based, the classical programming approach that we're all familiar with, except that they're coded in Python or R. And that's all they're saying that, hey, we're using AI. Okay. So that is a standardization that is actually being asked of, but the discussions regarding the standardization of AI have not really coalesced into any tangible, nothing like an ISO standard, or far from it. It's more of a philosophical discussion that's going on right now, and they're pretty much there. But definitely the last point there, expansion of job opportunities because of AI. Far from being a job killer, AI is becoming a job creator. While it is definitely true that the traditional jobs are being relegated to AI, the necessity to apply AI is creating a larger number of jobs than it is removing. Okay. And that is very clearly visible, because the job market that is getting created because of AI is far more than the number of graduates that are entering the job stream. The demand is higher than the supply. So the only thing that you can say is whatever the jobs that were being done for the past 20 years, those jobs will probably be gone, but a new variety of job is being created, a new skill set. If once a new skill set is learned, there is nothing like a job risk that is coming up. Okay. So these are all layman terminology of what are all the trends that are going on, but we'll go into specific technical details as we go forward. So the road so far, as I mentioned, I'll just read through this. There's nothing much to really speak in this one, so I'll just read through this. It's just a nice recap of how far we have come. 1950 was where Alan Turing has envisioned his Turing test to say whether a computer is intelligent or not, whether a person can, if a computer can fool a person into thinking that he is interacting with a human, then the computer can be said to be intelligent. That was, and he has performed and he has provided not a mathematical basis for it, but a empirical approach on how that judgment can be done. And the Turing test has definitely withstood the test of time, and there have been some phenomenal advancements that are going on in that. But no program can be said to be truly passing the Turing test. Even the latest chatbots or whatever, any human interaction AI, wherever, none of them have really passed the Turing test convincingly. In 1951, the first successful AI program was created to play checkers. Okay, and 1952 was when the first machine learning program was written, and it was called rote learning by rote, by hearting and learning. That was when the first. That's when we taught the machine to learn. Okay, and in 1954, the first artificial neural network, the perceptrons, were created in 1954. It's sometimes staggering to think that 1950 barely a computer was thought of, and in 54 we're already speaking of artificial neural networks and all. 1956, the term AI has been coined. Okay, and 56 to 74 were the first golden years of AI. That was so. After the golden years, where a lot of funding was poured into the programs, industry realized that AI is not going to be the human level intelligence is not going to be feasible anytime soon because of the limitations on the computing power and many other things, and the funding dried up. That was the first AI winter. Then there was a brief boom because of some of the Unix and all those kind of things were becoming popular. Writing programs was far easier than earlier, so there was a renewed period of interest in 1880-87, and then it dried down once again, which is the second AI winter. From 93 to 2011, a lot of theoretical improvements have happened, but AI firmly remained as a researcher's work rather than a mainstream activity. Okay, and 11th May 1997 is the very first time a program was proved to be more capable than a human being on a very particular activity, which is chess. Deep Blue beat Gary Kasparov on that day. And still, AI at that time was mostly behind the scenes. Deep Blue was capable of remembering something like 60 steps in advance and computing, remembering some 200 million steps. But that didn't make Deep Blue more intelligent than Gary Kasparov. It could memorize better. It could calculate faster than Gary Kasparov. That's all. So it's not a general intelligence. It was a very, very, very specific task of remembering and calculating the probabilities of 200 million steps. That's all it was, and it was doing very well. Okay. So I mean, that's in the criticism at that point was Deep Blue was essentially a glorified computer. That might be so, maybe not. We need not split hairs on that, on whether it's a glorified calculator or not. But definitely, it was not, artificial intelligence per se. But starting with 2011 and coming to now, the deep learning and other related fields have taken over, and artificial general intelligence is gaining a lot of prominence. But still, we are not close to artificial general intelligence, which has given rise to the three definitions of AI, three varieties of AI, which are generally called narrow AI, weak AI, strong AI, narrow AI, weak AI, and strong AI. Narrow AI is using multiple of a lot of this artificial intelligence algorithms for a very specific purpose. It will do that one job very well, but can't do anything other than that. All the Siri, Cortana, Google Assistant, etc. Most of the personal assistant chatbots that we see, you go to a bank website nowadays. It is very fashionable. Even IRCTC, they have a chatbot, right? That chatbot is very good at answering your question. What is my reservation status? You ask that chatbot, what is the time now? It can't answer because it has not been trained on that question. But it can answer your question, what is the reservation status? What is the status of reservation? What is my status of reservation? Those kind of variations it can handle very well. But you ask a question outside the corpus that it has been trained upon, it falls flat. Try, if in case you're interested, try with one, either Siri or Google Assistant, and ask it not the standard things like call home. The corpus on which it has been trained is things like call home, send message, this thing. Ask it a very different question. How should I propose to my girlfriend? It will fall flat. It will give you weird answers because it has not been trained on such questions. Okay, so this is called as narrow AI. Okay, now let's look at the marketing hype that has been built. Okay, we'll discuss a little more on this narrow AI, weak AI, strong AI in the next couple of slides. But let's look at the marketing hype that is actually getting built on this. Many of you would have seen this photograph. That is a robot called Sophia. It is a social humanoid robot developed by the Hong Kong-based company Hands-On Robotics. A lot of companies have built many robots, but Sophia is the first robot to receive citizenship of Saudi Arabia. And she is the first, it is the first non-human to receive a title from United Nations. UNO has called Sophia as Innovation Champion. This giving the honorary citizenship to Sophia has raised a lot of questions, ethical questions. Questions like, now that Sophia is a citizen of Saudi Arabia, can it marry? Can it vote? Can it say, I don't like this particular ruler as my leader? Anyway, the ethics questions apart, the marketing hype, it was almost as if people thought that, okay, the Hollywood style science fiction robots that we generally see in movies or Isaac Asimov's novels, etc., it has become a reality. It's just a matter of time. In another 6 months, these robots will be everywhere. That's the kind of hype that was created. But the reality is, they deliberately have shown the back view of the robot just to show it there, the reality. And this is a quotation from the chief scientist who designed Sophia. It is not ideal that some think of Sophia as having human equivalent intelligence. That's Ben Goertzel. He is the chief scientist who built Sophia. Others, more established, reputed leaders in the artificial intelligence industry were less charitable. I'll leave that reading that sentence to you. That's Jan LeCun. He is the godfather of deep learning. And that's what he said about Sophia. A chatbot with a face, that is the expert review of Sophia. And this is the reality. So, in between this hype and reality, where exactly do we stand and where exactly are we going? What are the directions in which we are going? These are the three things that we are standing at. Narrow AI. This is AI algorithms applied for a very specific problem. Deepface is the algorithm launched by Facebook for face recognition. and most of the experts have opined that deepface has pretty convincingly solved the face recognition problem that we have been having. We can have as small as low as 3-4 faces, and Facebook will look at them and identify many other faces, identify the faces uh, on data that it has not seen before prior to that. Okay, deepface is phenomenally successful. That's because Facebook has trained it on some few hundreds millions of photos it has in its database. They could manage that. But deepface cannot do anything except face recognition. It is almost all ridiculous to imagine deepface. Deepface is so successful at face recognition. Why don't I bring it to do something else like understanding speech recognition? I mean, it just doesn't work that way. You can't even send the data to it. The very input and output are not compatible. But purely with respect to face recognition, it is a great, no, it's essentially the state of the art. And the same thing applies for different other deep learning algorithms that are generally famous for as ResNet, Inception, YOLO. They are very, very good at image classifications, localizations, etc., etc. A very specific task for which they have been designed, but they absolutely fail at doing anything else. GPT-2, GPT-3 are really great. GPT-3 has been getting rave reviews for generating content, but GPT-3 cannot generate images. It can generate only text. Okay, so this is what is called as narrow AI, and a lot of marketings that we see in the market today. If someone comes and say, "Hey, we have an algorithm which predicts the stock market phenomenally well," maybe not, but that is narrow AI. Okay, and the strong AI, the last bullet point, that is the artificial general intelligence, which is human like intelligence. Okay, and that is very much in a research stage. There is not much we don't have as much progress in terms of coming to the human cognition and self-awareness and those kind of things, as much as we wish we would have, or as much as Hollywood scared us that we will have. We are far from it, and it's very much in a research stage. Weak AI is something which is between narrow AI and strong AI. That is the best definition that can be given, but there is no clarity on what it is. I mean, except a philosophical discussion and some vague answers, there is no clarity on what is weak AI, where does the boundary exist, etc. So most of the trends that we see are either commercial applications that are in the realm of narrow AI, or academic achievements, the research achievements which are going into the strong AI, or some research achievements in the narrow AI as well. But we'll go to the details of that as well. Okay, so these are what we would be focusing upon. What are the commercial areas where narrow AI has been making giant strides? How the strong AI is still taking the trial and go kind of approach in reaching the artificial general intelligence. Those are the things that we would be discussing on in the coming few slides. Okay, so select milestones here in the evolution of entire machine learning and artificial intelligence. So 1805 is when the statistical approach, ordinary least squares approach algorithm has been developed. In 1805, forget about computers. I don't think there is even electricity available everywhere. Current wars were much later in 18th century. So the linear regression approach, ordinary least squares algorithm, I should say, right? That was the algorithm that was first used for machine learning, and that has given the first impetus to machine learning, and we called it as supervised learning that happened sometime between 1805 and 1943, after computers became something a little more reasonable and things like that. Sometime their supervised learning has started. It's not mainstream, but the idea has come. It's just the idea. The first research paper related to that has happened. In 1943, the neural networks, the basic thought of neural networks has started. And in 1951, KNN, K nearest neighbors algorithm was created, again using statistics approach. And that became the supervised learning classification. These two, regression and classification, have formed the bulk of machine learning paradigms. I mean, the supervised learning, machine learning algorithm families within supervised learning. And supervised learning is the one which has driven AI from a pure researcher's delight to an industry adoption. Unsupervised learning was not the bigger driver. It was supervised learning which was the initial driver, and that has essentially brought AI to industry. Okay. Then after that came neural networks and deep learning with the development of perceptron. Neural networks and deep learning have they have taken birth. Support vector machines have helped improve the classification algorithms better. K-means clustering in 1967 was the one which opened the vista onto unsupervised learning. The entire field of machine learning as it stands today is broken down into either supervised learning or unsupervised learning. And unsupervised learning was identified much later in 1967. Though unsupervised learning has a far more number of applications, it is the supervised learning which has given the initial impetus to actually, not leaving it as a pure theoretical curiosity, but actually making it something of practical application. It was supervised learning that has done that. Okay. And in 1967, another vista was added to the machine learning AI, which is unsupervised learning. And then came other approaches, decision trees. Then in 1986, RNNs, that is recurrent neural networks. In 1990 has come LeNet, which has introduced convolutional neural networks, etc., and has transformed how we look at computer vision. The random forest algorithm, which is very popular with one of the favorite tools of data scientists on any given day, it is a relatively recent addition coming up in 1995. The long short-term memory, the concept was proposed in 1997, and from there I'll skip to a little recent, which is GANs, that is generative adversarial networks, wherein for the first time computers started creating original content. Up to 2014, computers were learning about existing content, but in 2014, computers started creating content of their own. And there started a lot of ethical questions. Who owns the copyright on the computer generated content? Right? So those are all the ethics and legal questions, which, it's a discussion for another day, but it's definitely an interesting thought. Okay. I will not spend time on this one because this is a much more detailed description of of the different milestones that we have had. The only thing that I'm going to mention a little bit is this 2005 RankNet. This last row on the left-hand side table, because it's one of the more respected algorithms, and that is an algorithm which kind of sort of opened up one more vista in the supervised machine learning space called machine learning to rank. So supervised machine learning you can think of it as having three vistas. One is regression, the other is classification, third is machine learning to rank. And the RankNet algorithm, which was designed and developed by Microsoft, has won some awards for withstanding the test of time. Okay, we'll not spend too much time on this one because this is just a history repetition. But the current growth, now we are coming to how is AI today. So far we have seen the history, but how is AI today? AI today is growing, is expanding in four different directions from the way I see it. Okay, one is newer algorithms, where every day we are coming up with newer algorithms, either for either a new the statistics based approaches have not new statistics based approaches have not come up in recent times. Everything is going towards deep learning. So either it is a new optimization algorithm, or a new activation function, or a different way of resolving the loss functions, etc., etc., or a completely new architecture of the neural network, whether it is RNNs or GANs or encoders, decoders, BERT, all these kind of things. That is one direction the industry is moving in. And that's more of a research kind of a growth. The other area that the industry is going into is applying the existing algorithms to newer and newer and newer domains. Traditionally, it was thought of that machine learning is more and more applicable for, or at least the early adopters were the finance domains, predicting the stock markets, all those kind of things. But now AI is going into unbelievable, hitherto unthinkable areas like space exploration, military and defense, healthcare, personal robotic pets. A robotic pet, which would imagine a computer, imagine a robotic dog, which will work just as good as any other regular dog, but will not, doesn't have to be given food or anything like that. You don't have to feed it every day. You don't have to take it for a walk every day, but it will serve just as honestly and as loyally as a real dog. So those are the different education is one area where AI is making some major strides. Okay, those are the new domains where AI is getting applied. And then on the monetization front, AI is getting commoditized. We'll see some slides on that in the coming in the next few slides. So I'll not go too much deep into it. But how can AI be used to generate revenue, both for end users, the AI providers, and middlemen? We'll see the details there. Okay. And the fourth direction where AI is going is it is evolving as a discipline. The moment it came out of researchers and came into the engineers' hands, a discipline is being required, because as long as it was a research work, working in certain special circumstances was acceptable. But once it is becoming a commercial sort of a consumer product, a discipline is required to maintain the AI product landscape, ecosystems, etc. And that evolution is the fourth area where the trends are, the growth is happening. All these four are really, sort of going in four different directions and overlapping once in a while, wherever possible. Okay, borrowing from one another, etc. So we'll go through each one of these areas in some detail. Any questions on this so far, please? Okay. So some of the newer algorithms, spiking networks, this is something which I am personally fond of, so that's the reason I put it on the top. Okay. It's the third generation of neural networks. Most of the neural networks that we are seeing today, whether it is Inception, ResNet, YOLO, BERT, GPT-3, you name it. Most of them are second generation neural networks. We'll see the difference between second generation and third generation in the coming slides. But the growth is now into the research is in the third generation neural networks, which are expected to be much more powerful, faster, and much more efficient compared to the second generation neural networks. Okay, then we have something called RankNet. I just mentioned this. It's a deep learning based implementation for machine learning to rank. It was the machine learning to rank was a fairly old problem, which was suggested more than the concept was suggested more than 35 years back. But RankNet was released in 2005 and it was adopted for the Bing search engine. Okay, and in 2015 it won many awards for for its applicability into multiple areas. Then the third one is, and this is again a relatively recent phenomenon, transfer learning along with CNNs. The transfer learning concept itself is also again in the theoretical world, in the purely research world, the transfer learning concept is 30 years old or maybe more. But applying the transfer learning to convolutional neural networks together and using them for solving computer vision problems, that is relatively recent. I would say around 20, I think it was around 2015 or 2016, when someone suddenly realized that, hey, we can use transfer learning with CNNs, and that has revolutionized the entire computer vision market. We'll see the details going forward. And then a very recent, sort of a baby which has grown into a giant is generative AI. It is very, very recent. The first paper on generative using AI to generate content was released in 2016, and already it has made some phenomenal strides with huge scope for for misuse. So we'll see the details in the next few slides. Okay, so these are some of the new algorithms that are happening. That's the one dimension. We'll go through the spiking neural. We'll go through these new algorithms for a few slides. It's a very interesting topic, and then we'll go into the commoditizations and the other areas as well, the newer domains, etc. So the spiking neural network is considered as a natural successor to the current artificial neural networks. The current artificial neural networks are essentially perceptrons, and it's a stack of perceptrons, multiple layers of perceptrons and attached to one another, where all the neurons, it's a fully connected layer where every neuron in the current layer is connected to every other neuron in the next layer and also in the previous layer. This is, and all neurons, if you imagine them as a electricity connection, right? Every neuron sends information to every other neuron in the next layer. Okay, but spiking neural networks are different. The current artificial neural networks, while they are very, very successful, they are not truly they do not reflect the behavior of neurons in our brain. The neurons in our brain, when we are seeing something, every neuron in the brain doesn't get active. Even in the visual cortex, every neuron doesn't get active. Only when a neuron receives a certain amount of information, beyond a certain threshold, okay, then the threshold is called membrane potential in biology. Okay, so only after the neuron receives a certain amount of impulse from the previous neuron, it will send that information to the next neuron. So if the information is less than that threshold, then the brain suppresses it. Okay, I mean the neuron suppresses it. Easy way of understanding this is, say for example, okay, you are listening to a favorite movie song of yours. Okay, so your ears are receiving that information and they're, you know, they're processing it, etc., etc. Movie song, Carnatic music, whatever it might be. And at that time, someone, a friend of yours just walks in front of you. You see that person, but you don't really process that. Someone walked away, okay, fine. You just, you know, you just don't focus on it because visual cortex, the synapses that have been coming out of visual cortex are suppressed, and only the synapses that are going out of the auditory area of the brain, they receive a much more higher, you know, the synapses are higher over there. Okay, this, so certain neurons are not having that, they have not crossed that potential, that barrier, so the information coming from that is not sent for processing. But at the same time, let's say it's not your friend who is just walking across, but let's say you have suddenly seen, you know, some fire going on in front of you. Then you ignore the audio that's coming to your ears, but you process the visual information, right? Because the visual cortex, the neurons in the visual cortex have fired. The information coming out of that is, you know, the it has crossed the membrane potential, and they are sending information much more strongly, and your audio information is suppressed. This, you know, at sort of an oversimplified level, this is how the neurons in our brain work, and that is what the spiking neural networks replicate. So they more closely resemble the brain's synapses and brain's biological functions, and theoretically they are much more powerful than the current second generation neural networks. In the current second generation networks, you can see the, you know, tabular comparison here. The artificial neural networks, neurons are fully connected. Every neuron speaks to every other neuron. If I have to make a crude comparison over there, the neurons of the ear are connected to the neurons of the eye. The neurons of the eyes are connected to the neurons of taste. Taste is connected to touch. Touch is connected to ear. Becomes a lot of jumble, right? Whereas in spiking neural networks, the neurons are spatially locally connected. In a way, they are very, very similar to CNNs. If you look at a CNN, the neurons talk only to the adjacent neurons. Okay, the same thing is applicable in the spiking neural networks as well. The neurons are connected only to the adjacent neurons. They don't speak to every other neuron in the next and previous layers. Only a small subset. Okay. In artificial neural networks, the second generations, the output of a neuron is a continuous value. Okay. Whereas in the spiking neural networks, the neuron's output is a discrete yes or no, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. That is what it outputs. In artificial neural network, every neuron fires every time during the propagation. Backward propagation, forward propagation, every neuron fires every time. Whereas in the spiking neural network, I just explained this, neuron fires only when the value reaches that membrane potential. And once it reaches the membrane potential, the information is sent. If it doesn't reach the potential, the information remains 0. Which means that the neuron doesn't get fired. The neuron output is 0. Okay. And that is the beauty of spiking neural network. Because of the spatial and the temporal connectivity that is obtained in spiking neural networks, the spiking neural networks are much more less energy consuming, much more efficient than the second generation ANNs that we currently have. the sigmoid ReLU rectified linear unit, leaky ReLU. These are the most commonly used activation functions in the artificial neural networks. Whereas in the spiking neural networks, the commonly used activation function that has been researched so far is leaky integrate and fire, LIF model. It essentially means that if the incoming value and the calculated value, every neuron calculates a function, right? The output of that function, if it is beyond the threshold, then send 1. If it is less than the threshold, send 0. That's what it means. That is a leaky integrate and fire. Okay. Now, the direct consequence of this is the current deep learning networks, whatever we have, they have, if you look at it mathematically, there is every neural network has a loss function or an error function, cost function, whichever way you want, not error function, an error calculation. So a loss function or a cost function. The cost function must be a convex function for the stochastic gradient descents, etc., to work. Otherwise, the neural network will not converge. That's what we call it. Okay. And because of this, the activation functions we use, etc., if the cost function must be convex, and mathematically we can do a differentiation calculation of the cost function everywhere. By the very nature of the activation functions we use, the loss function is differentiable everywhere, which means that, if you think of a very simple single layer, single network, single neuron kind of an ANN, the cost function has to be convex, a U kind of a shape, or either a reverse U or a U kind of a shape. Without that, the neural networks will not work. Whereas in spiking neural networks, mathematically, the loss function is not differentiable entirely. It is differentiable only in certain areas. If we do a d by dx of the cost function where the value is less than 0, it's not going to make any sense. The value, it just doesn't work out. So the cost function is not necessarily convex. Now the wording may make it sound like this is a drawback, but it is not. The cost function not being restricted to the convex shape is actually an advantage, because in real life, for the real world problems that we see, cost functions are rarely true convex. They have a weird shapes, and such weird shapes can be understood better by spiking neural networks than artificial neural networks. Okay. And there have been some amount of research. There have been some significant amount of research that have been going on into this one. The biggest challenges with spiking neural networks are the current, most of the way that we build our we build our data pipelines, etc. We train our deep learning models is not really tuned towards the requirements of a spiking neural network. So the training is the biggest challenge. You have to train it in a different way. You have to do the inference in a different way. You have to observe it in quite a different way. So there research is going on to solve this problem, but we are not quite there where spiking neural networks have, they have not yet come to a mainstream scenario yet. Okay. So then RankNet. Like I said, this is RankNet is not too recent. Like I said, it was developed by Microsoft in 2005. It has opened up another branch of supervised machine learning called machine learning to rank. The idea first was proposed in 1989, but it was, Microsoft has deployed something called RankNet. Then there was Lambda Rank. There were many other models that were built around the concept after Microsoft has released their RankNet approach. Okay, but they are essentially variations of whatever Microsoft has developed. And RankNet has really changed the game when it comes to information retrieval combined with NLP. Think of it like this. We go to the search engine, and I ask a question to it. So let's say I'm searching for India cricket team. Now, there can be 100 websites where the word India cricket team is found. Showing all that 100 to me is good, but I would prefer if the most relevant website comes up on the top, right? Now, such results, the most relevant result should be on the top, and results of low relevance should be at somewhere at the at the end. There, what are we doing? We are ranking the results. This web page is more relevant compared to that web page. We are setting an order. It's not simply yes, no kind of a classification, but it's actually this is yes, that is yes, this is better than that. That kind of that is the machine learning that happens over there. It learns the sequence, preferences, okay, and that has changed the game for search engines. And it has been used for decision making, recommender systems, and in many other scenarios as well. We'll not go into too many details onto this RankNet right now, but if anyone is interested, I invite you to please go through that URL I put over there. That is another presentation that I have done for another occasion like this, and there I have dealt with classification vis-a-vis ranking in a significant detail over there. So if anyone is interested, I invite you to go through that URL there. So then comes the other major stride that was done in the machine learning area, which is called transfer learning. Transfer learning is not expected to, it is actually doing this. The kind of impetus supervised learning has given to the field of AI, transfer learning is doing it once again. Okay. So basically what happens here is transfer learning is a subfield of machine learning and artificial intelligence. It applies the knowledge gained from one task to another similar task. And thereby, we as the researchers or end users, whichever way it is, we don't have to reinvent the wheel once again. For example, if I build a model which can do sentiment analysis of movie review text, I can, and then I have a separate requirement where I have to do sentiment analysis of a consumer electronics products review. If we imagine that the transfer learning is not present at all, then I'll have to train a model from scratch for doing sentiment analysis. I have to train another model from scratch for consumer electronics product, and again some other model from scratch if I have to do a some audio review, some music review text, etc. Some other reviews text. Sentiment analysis has to be done. Review of the government, something of that sort. Wherever sentiment analysis has to be done, I have to build the entire network, everything, train it, everything from scratch. Whereas with transfer learning, I take the model that was created for doing movie reviews, and the last layer of the neural network, which is very specific towards good movie, bad movie, worse movie, great movie, I'll remove that alone, and I'll train that one layer alone on good product, bad product, helpful product, not particularly useful product, well thought product, and I'll train everything else remains the same. I don't train the remainder of the network. Only the last one or maybe two layers of the neural network are trained, which reduces the training time by many orders of magnitude. If I have to train, I'll give you a rough comparison. If I have to train the inception network on Inception network has been trained on the open source data set called ImageNet. It has some 10, 15 million images or something like that. And it has been trained to classify whether the image is of a cat or a dog or a human being or an aeroplane or a ship. There are some set of 1,000 or 1,200 classes, some 1,500 classes or something like that. Now, I want to take that image classification and use it for identifying whether the X-ray photograph shows a fracture, yes or no. Without transfer learning, if I have to train the model entirely, it would take me many days to run the training algorithm. Days just to train the model. But with transfer learning, I can finish it in perhaps, I mean, of course, depending upon the data set sizes and all that, but you can finish it in maybe 4 or 5 hours, perhaps. That is the kind of improvement that we'll get with transfer learning. An example, as I mentioned at the bottom here, this is one of the things that I also personally worked on this, and there has been a very successful Kaggle competition as well on this. Inception v3 is an image classification model trained on ImageNet. This has been repurposed to identify diabetic retinopathy of medical images of eyes. Okay, and if I have to retrain Inception v3 from scratch on the Kaggle dataset, it would take me on, let's say, on a decent machine, it took me some 5 to 7 days for training Inception v3 from scratch. Now, if I apply transfer learning techniques, the same training will finish in maybe 3 hours, and I would get still really good results. That is the beauty of transfer learning, and that has suddenly brought computer vision, NLP, etc. to mainstream commercial usage. The AI researcher builds, he'll do a lot of research and he'll build one model for analyzing movie reviews, sentiment analysis of movie reviews, and that model is deployed. I want to use it for doing sentiment analysis on Twitter. That is my business. So instead of having to build everything from scratch, I'll just take his model, perform transfer learning, maybe 3 hours or 1 day, no more than that, and my model is ready. I can deploy it to production. I can make money in the next 1 week. There is no more ground up research. I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm taking an available model and I'm using it for my individual purpose. Done. This is why transfer learning has all of a sudden started changing the world, especially for the deep learning networks, etc. Again, to give you an example, Inception v3 is trained on ImageNet, so it has been trained to identify cats, dogs, horses, cycle, etc. I will do transfer learning on it, and I will train it to understand which is a sofa, which is a teapot, which is a chair, etc., etc. And I'll build a small robot which can just walk around my house and monitor everything in the house, inside the house. I don't have to spend days training the model. I mean, I don't have to spend months to train the model. In a matter of a week or maybe 2 weeks or something, a fraction of the amount of the time, my model is ready. And the original model, fortunately, many people have deployed the original models, YOLO, Inception, ResNet. These have been deployed as open source. Okay, so I'll take the open source models, train them, use them, and my problem is solved. I can get to commercializing, building a product of my own without too much upfront research. This is where transfer learning is really changing the world. So, any questions on this newer algorithms that we have discussed so far? Next, we are going into the domains part. What are the newer domains that we're going to see?
Sir, good evening. I am Kalidas calling.
Yes, please.
Hello.
Yeah, tell me, sir.
Into how many domains as on today AI has its special effect, like medical sciences or stock market, or how many domains AI is really strong as on today?
I don't think there is any domain left today where AI is not making an impact.
Okay.
It could be various levels of impact. Okay. It may not be visible directly for an end consumer, but the impact is most assuredly there. You tell me a domain, I'll tell you how it is impacting, how AI is impacting it. Medical, let's
What
take the
I
medical.
heard, smart SIP using AI to have better appreciation of the funds in stock market.
Yes, absolutely.
I read an
Absolutely.
article saying that they have introduced the smart SIP using AI.
Yes, yes, finance had been one of the earliest adopters of AI. And whether the smart SIP, is it really smart, or is it like marketing Sophia type of marketing hype, is a different discussion. I'll not get into that. But
Yeah, could be.
yeah, we can't say that. I mean, but yes, time series forecasting and all those different kind of models, they are impacting. AI is being adopted in those areas with a staggering content. I'll give you names of a few companies. There is Tact, there are people.ai. There are many other such companies which are using AI for finance domains. And nowadays, many of the like you said, this SIPs or this what is it called, asset management companies, they have to justify why they are doing it. Hedge funds, all these people, they're using AI to various areas and various effects. I'll tell you another
Okay, sir.
example.
I have one more interesting question.
Yes, please.
Now, see, our country's human resources are very large.
Yes.
People appearing for various entrance exams is very, very high, like NEET, IIT, CAT, so many good exams. Can there be any artificial intelligence model where the students can use it and likely predict what kind of questions can come very close to the actual reality questions?
I won't say no. It might be possible. Okay. It all comes down to how we are going to frame our question, our machine learning problem. Predicting something that is definitely going to be, how are you going to look at it as? Are you going to look at it as a unsupervised learning, or are you going to look at it as a supervised learning? That is how the question is. If we can bring up a data set and build a proper mathematical equation for it, then we can use AI to solve it.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Because AI, the secret which people don't generally say is, I'll just take a detour with a small, sort of a joke here. In case you have read this book, Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy, it's a funny science fiction book. There's nothing serious in it, but in that book, people create a very powerful supercomputer, and they ask it, what is the answer to life, universe, and everything? What is the answer? And the computer thinks for a few hundreds of years and says the answer is 42.
Okay.
Say, what do you mean 42? And the computer says, that is the question. You did not ask me the question. You only told me, tell me the answer. I don't have the capability to find the question. Machine learning is exactly like that. machine learning finds the answers, but the real challenge is finding the question. That finding that question is a firmly human activity, at least as of now.
Framing the correct question.
Framing the question, the mathematical framing of the question, that is a human activity. And if we can frame the question mathematically, we can use AI to find the answer.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
But to answer your question, there is in America there is a very popular game called Jeopardy, wherein people guess the alphabets of a word, and after some 5 or 6 alphabets are shown, they have to guess the entire word. That is a popular game. They have built AI to solve that, to answer the Jeopardy game. So yes, like you said, answering this sort of guessing the question paper might be possible. I won't say it is. I will not say it is impossible, but we have to frame the question appropriately. We have to frame.
No, that would be of a great help, in my opinion, for human resources like this in our country, where lakhs of students are appearing for various exams. That kind of model, I think, AI can do a great help to the students.
Yeah, definitely. But like I said, the challenge is identifying the question, identifying the mathematical function which governs the question. Once that is done, we can get the answer. Okay, shall I move on to the next?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please go to the next slide.
So some of the newer domains where AI is actually making AI adoption is really fast. I mean, there are many other, but these are some of the things that I have some knowledge about. That's the reason I captured them here. Okay, the traditional domains are the market research, finance, engineering, education, medicine, astronomy, etc. Okay, but the newer domains where AI is really, it's kind of an exponential growth is predicted in these areas is robotic process automation, robotic warfare and defense, drones, quadcopters, etc. There was an article in the Enadu paper just day before yesterday, or maybe yesterday. India is now planning to buy so many hundreds of drones and also manufacture them within the country by DRDO. Right. So the drones are self-operating. They fly across the border and they are capable of shooting down targets. And people, which means that they'll have to fly on their own. They'll include computer vision. They'll include a lot of other decision makings, etc. Okay, so warfare and defense is being entirely changed by drones and quadcopters. Cyber security is another area where AI is, the kind of progress AI is making is quite staggering. It is helping in filtering content. In olden days, when I say olden days, I'm speaking of 3-4 years back, not more than that. We all had, children safety features in our browser. Don't allow children to visit some mature websites, etc. And that was dependent on some very blunt rules. If you find these 4 or 5 words, then that is that's a adult website. That's all. And once we know the problem, the solution is also easy to find, right? So don't use those 4 words, right? Instead of using, it is very common. If you look at, maybe if any of the students allow us to do it, wherever the word, instead of using the word specs, they'll use a $ex. Okay, so and that defeats the pure text-based search. In such kind of areas, NLP is making major strides, and it is catching, filtering content very well, identifying attack vectors. Where can the next hacking attempt happen? Predicting where the hacking attempt can happen, denial of service can happen, that is being done by by AI. Measuring the threat exposure. What is the risk of getting hacked? And as soon as a hack has been observed, a breach has been observed, what is the incident response? These are all being modified by AI significantly. Media and entertainment is one area where it is expected that in some 20-25 years time, children will say, in olden days, people used to act in movies. Nowadays, we are saying that olden days, actors fought, using wires, dupe, etc. Nowadays, Bahubali, it's all graphics. In another 20-25 years, or maybe even sooner, children will say that in olden days, people used to act in movies. There won't be actors anymore. Everything is AI generated. Everything is generated using AI. GANs, deep nostalgia, deep fakes. We'll see some examples going forward. And the other area where AI is potential is, it's like exploit as much as you can is advertising and marketing, mass customization. Mass customization is a concept which started purely from the advertising and marketing areas. So a company wants to send a marketing brochure to all potential customers. Say someone like Thomas Cook, etc. These are all the destinations that we are serving, and they want to send it to say 50,000 people. Entire 50,000 people cannot be given a sales brochure about 5-day trip to Antarctica, right? That doesn't make sense. Someone like me would prefer a 2-day trip just to a nearby city and then come back. Some others may prefer a 1-day trip or a 2-day trip to some far away part of North India. Someone like my mother would prefer a trip to all the religious places. So customization has to happen at scale. They can't say that they'll send the marketing material has to be created for 50,000 people, but has to be customized for every individual user. And in this case, AI is making some phenomenal strides. Phenomenal. When we go to any of our websites, YouTube, Facebook, etc., Amazon, you go to Amazon, search for some toy or shoes or something like that. For the next 4 or 5 days, go to any other website, you'll be seeing the advertisement of shoes. That is mass customization. That is where AI is making a lot of. All Google, Facebook, all this, even Microsoft, not Apple, but all these are this major tech service providers, Twitter, etc., who are providing their platforms free of cost. Google is free of cost. Android phone, Samsung, Micromax, they charge it for the hardware, but Android itself is free of cost. Why? Because they're using the data to do mass customization, and the AI is helping them to do the mass customization there. Okay, I mean, it's a never-ending dollar mine where the more you do, the more you get. That is the kind of domain where mass customization, advertising, and marketing is. Then hybrid workforce and advertising and marketing, not just online, but AI is now helping offline advertising and marketing as well. Okay, that's what I wanted to highlight when I put that mass customization over there. Then the other domain which is just beginning to happen is hybrid workforce, wherein humans and computers sort of work together. Hybrid workforce was not expected to materialize until the next 10 years. But because of the COVID-related lockdown and everybody working from home, etc., hybrid workforce is like happening now. I'll give you an example, a small case study, without going into specific details. There was a company whose job is to invest in stock market or sell, etc. But they'll do it purely on my instruction. Okay. Now I don't have time to call them, wait in a call center for half an hour, and then give instructions, etc., etc. It's a time-taking process, especially for the intraday trading, etc. So what do they do? WhatsApp. You have the WhatsApp chat messengers, right? You just sell some ONGC shares or buy ONGC at 500 rupees, buy some 300 shares, etc. Now, who is responding to that? It's not a human being. If you think that a human being is responding to that, you're mistaken. A computer is the first responder. It processes all that data, and in a lot of cases, it automatically does all the operation. Okay. And in few cases, a human being gets involved. That is a hybrid workforce. So by the time a human being is involved, computer has already done something. Unlike in the good olden days, some 3-4 years back, starting from the first action, the first responder was a human being. But now the first responder is a computer. You go to any bank website nowadays, you'll see a chatbot. That's what I mentioned. IRCTC also has chatbot. Who is responding on the chatbot on the other side? It's not IRCTC. It's not a human being. It is a computer. And by the time a human being is involved, certain amount of operation has already happened from the point of view of the end user. This is hybrid workforce. Okay. And this is happening now. I mean, it was not expected to be mainstream until the next decade or so, but because of this COVID related disruption, the tech adoption had been phenomenal, and it is happening right now. Before I go into more, I have covered only 15 slides. So, Prasad garu, do we have another 10 minutes?
No, sir. Time is almost over.
Yeah.
College timings are up to 4:30. We have.
Okay.
Any other slides, sir? How much time?
I'll cover only one more slide, sir. Then.
Okay, no issue, sir. We can.
Just one more slide, and we'll stop it there. I hope it's not too boring.
No, it's not boring. It's very interesting one, sir. Your experiences, all you're sharing. Especially, can you please cover about research areas in AI?
Yes, sir. Yeah, research areas are the ones which I just covered here. So this third generation neural networks, then the newer algorithms. These are the areas, because original research is something which I am not too familiar with. I just spent some knowledge on the tracking networks out of my curiosity. But I don't have a slide, but if you prefer, then I can just briefly speak about it.
What are the other expectations from you is Must Research Club is also giving some internships to the students. Can you please tell that what type of research, what type of internships are happening, so that students can get benefit from that?
Sure, sir. Then I'll just cover this slide and then I'll go to Must.
Yes, please. Please concentrate the second one, which I said just now.
Yeah. Sure. So, okay. So the general research areas that are happening, this is the hype cycle of Gartner's AI hype cycle, a very, very trusted tool for identifying which areas are actually, in the research stage, which areas are actually in the money-making job market stage, etc. Okay. So as you can see here in this trough of disillusionment, if you see my mouse pointer here, there is a trough of disillusionment there. Okay. And as you can see in that column, in that area, chatbots and computer vision, people are getting thought a whole lot about it. And they said that now they're saying that, hey, it's not doing as much as we thought it would do. Okay. So, and the peak of inflated expectations, edge AI cloud services, this is where the job market is. Okay. And the research work is in this, in the innovation trigger, artificial general intelligence, small data, responsible AI, generative AI, neuromorphic hardware. I'm not quite sure what it is, but even I have seen the name here. But decision intelligence, smart robots. See that? Smart robots, not just regular robots, smart robots. These are all the areas where research is going on. Okay. So GPU accelerators have reached the plateau of productivity and they have stabilized. So it has become a niche domain. NLP, deep learning, and AI cloud services are gaining a lot of traction, lot of traction these days. And in 2 to 5 years' time, they'll become gold mines. Anyone with those knowledge in those areas, they will be highly sought after resources. Okay. So I'll skip through the remaining ones here. I'll invite you to go through this YouTube URLs because these are all computer generated videos and not real. You see on the top here, Obama did not speak of all this, speak whatever is being shown here. It was computer generated, but it is so realistic that all these are computer generated. Okay. And this is where multimedia and entertainment is using AI. So, and these are the latest algorithms that have happened in NLP and in computer vision. These are mainstream already, not in the research domain. They're actually being used for commercial purposes. Okay. And some of the, okay. So then coming to must research, I'll just speak about this for 30 seconds. And Must Research Club, I'm the vice president of this club. We are a technology NGO headquartered in Hyderabad, but spread all over India. We are dedicated to promote excellence and competence in the field of data science, cognitive computing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and advanced analytics. Our tagline is, it's a must. Our vision is to build an ecosystem that enables interactions between academia and enterprise, and we help them in resolving problems and make aware of the latest developments in the cognitive area. We are India's largest AI community with 500 plus data scientists. We have built multiple robots. We have built Softy in collaboration with Microsoft. I invite you to go through that video over there. We have done multiple demonstrations of our robots, Masti and Mastani, which have multimodal interactions, actually moving hands, facial speech recognition, etc. And we have, I'm very proud to say that we have received a letter of appreciation from Government of Telangana for our contributions for the year of AI, for the year of 2020. Even though the year has been battered with pandemics and things like that, with COVID-related disruptions, we are proud to say that we have made some phenomenal contributions to the government's idea of making Hyderabad as the AI capital of the country, and we have received a letter of appreciation as well on that. Okay, and our publications are, in addition to multiple research papers and publications, we have also written a book which introduces machine learning from the basics through supervised and unsupervised. And anyone who wants to start in the field of machine learning, we have written a book for them to guide them through, cut through the clutter and marketing, advertising gimmicks that we see in this, Amirpet style institutes and all that. Right? We cut through all that clutter and we wrote them what is required for the industry. After interacting with some close to 500 students who have developed this book. So I invite you to please take a look at this as well. Now coming to internships, we, all these research papers, publications, and all the robots, and there are many other projects that we run within the research club, mostly out of interest and curiosity. I feel like, okay, this is one nice publication I want to work up, one nice research area that I want to work upon. I do some work on it and then I write a paper about it. It's not something which my company tells me to do. Okay, I just do it just because I'm curious. So we have a lot of projects running in those areas in wide varieties, starting from robotics all the way to Arduino programming and pure Python structured data processing kind of activities. So in if anyone is interested in working on this research papers, publications, etc., we are happy to offer internships to students. Okay, it's an unpaid internship. We're not a company, we are a hobby club, and we are doing something more sort of giving back to the society out of our own interest. So we can give you certifications and stuff like that, but we can't give you any internship monetary payments. But we definitely, if anyone is interested in working on this pure research areas, etc., we do invite you to please join our Must Research Club, and go to www.must.co.in, and you can join as a student member, and we'll be more than happy to work with you and work on these research papers, so that it adds a credential to your profile as well. Definitely having a research paper and a Springer, etc., it's definitely something which adds value. Okay, so with that, I'll conclude this. The PDF version of this I've already sent to Prasad Garu. So
Yes,
I
sir.
do invite everyone to, sir, please do feel free
Yes, sir. Thank
to
you.
share it to everyone.
Sir, before saying, our HOD sir is available, sir.
Okay.
Sir, HOD sir, can you say few words? I think sir is in meeting. Okay, sir. Before saying what I'm, just I would like to share about Krishna Garu. Krishna is very good for last 3 years. We are very close. So we used to discuss about especially the students' point of view, the welfare of the students, and also the various research works point of view. We used to share a lot of the information. Thank you, Garu, for sparing your value. Now I request Kalidas Garu, please say the word of thanks on our college.
Thank you, Dr. G.N.R. Prasad sir. On behalf of Department of MCA and Head of the Department and all other my esteemed colleagues, I take this opportunity to extend vote of thanks to Gopi Krishna Garu for spending his valuable time and enlightening us in depth with regards to the artificial intelligence, its evaluation, its growth, and its domains. And as on today, the latest state of art of technology of the applications of artificial intelligence. We really thank his knowledge and as well as also his application-oriented, in-depth discussion for sparing a lot of time to us, valuable time to us. So, sir, we look forward for longer or much more interactions in the same manner. And also, in the last, what you have stated that we would like to extend internships, may not be on a monetary basis, but definitely for the students to interact with the live projects or whatever research area which your company is undertaking under your able leadership, so that our students also get benefited a lot. So once more, our sincere thanks to you, sir, for sparing your valuable time and sharing the valuable knowledge in all terms. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for the opportunity, sir. We do look forward to.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.